Donald Trump's love of retribution might complicate his dream of naming a new Federal Reserve chairman. Yesterday, Trump officially announced that the former Fed governor, Kevin Warsh, would be his pick to succeed Jerome Powell as the chair in May. Warsh has built a reputation as a Fed critic who thinks the central bank has drifted beyond its mandate. But Trump's constant targeting of Powell, the current Fed chair, is putting Warsh's Senate confirmation in question. Republican Senator Thom Tillis, who sits on both the Finance and Banking committees, tweeted yesterday that while, quote, Kevin Warsh is a qualified nominee, Tillis will, quote, oppose the confirmation of any Federal Reserve nominee, including the position of chairman, until the DOJ's inquiry into Chairman Powell is fully and transparently resolved. Joining us now to discuss is Natasha Surin. She is a professor at Yale Law School and president of Yale's Budget Lab. So, Natasha, there's all these complications about whether Warsh can actually get through the process. But what are your top-line thoughts on what kind of Fed chair he would be?
Yeah, so I think we kind of don't yet know. But here are some things on the positive side of the ledger. He is a believer in central bank independence, and he has stated that explicitly time and time again. He is someone who has experience at the institution. He was actually the youngest person ever appointed to the Fed Board of Governors. So he's been there. He was there during the financial crisis. He really understands it deeply and well. On the sort of like less good side, I have been pretty troubled by the tone that I have heard from him over the course of the last many months, which has been replete with the type of criticism of the Federal Reserve and of the staff of the Federal Reserve, calling them deadwood, saying there needs to be regime change. I think it makes it hard, frankly, to effectively steward an organization in that way. And the other thing that's kind of striking is this is someone who has believed his entire career in the importance of high interest rates and has been concerned about the fact that interest rates were too low and that had a negative impact on the economy, and has kind of changed his tune on that in the last few months in a way that makes it seem, at least, that he could potentially be someone who's being swayed by the political atmospheric.
Well, this is why I was surprised when you right out the gate said the good thing about him is that he respects Federal Reserve independence, because I am very dubious of that. He gave a speech. I'm doing a deep dive into Kevin Warsh. He gave a speech in 2010 called an ode to independence. But like more recently, as you point out, he's in favor of high interest rates when a Democrat is in office and less so when Trump is in office, a Republican. And not only that, but like a
stand-up guy.
I know. It sounds a little bit like the deficit hawks. The deficit hawks who seem to like go underground when Republicans are in the White House. But also, Kevin Warsh has kind of mocked some of the concerns about the politicization of the Fed. When Lisa Cook was fired by Donald Trump, she's now challenging that. That's going to the Supreme Court. All of the living Fed chairs filed a brief with the Supreme Court saying, like, this is really bad for Fed independence. And Kevin Warsh was just like, oh, I didn't realize that these economists knew about constitutional law now. Like, I don't know. It seems like...
So listen, I
know you want to give him the benefit of the doubt.
I am also kind of comparing from the lists of names that you saw that the president was floating for this potential position.
Okay,
and I'm looking at someone who has experience, who has a great deal of experience within the institution. And the other thing is, let's all remember, he is but one vote on a 12-member Federal Open Markets Committee. And that means if he walks into the FOMC as one vote and says, you know what, interest rates need to be lower because Donald Trump says they need to be, he will be the one vote for that, and there will be 11 votes against him.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. I wanted to ask you, how much power does the chair of the Federal Reserve have? And given the fact that the administration operates in this way where they kind of try to trade favors or perhaps even try to intimidate people into behaving a certain way, as they are with Lisa Cook, this is an administration, certainly this is a president who's willing to badger and harass people to get what he wants them to do, to the point that he doesn't even have to say, here's what I want you to do. Some of them will go down to Georgia and do it for him and show up at like election centers. So I'm not an expert at the Federal Reserve. I don't know these people very well, but I just read about them in the newspapers, and I don't know their character. I don't know their integrity. And I think that's what really is the more pressing question is like, how much power does he have? What does his moral integrity look like in being able to stand up to Donald Trump the same way that Jerome Powell has said to him, I'm not going to do what you want me to do, and I'm going to reject that, even though you are the one who appointed me?
First of all, with respect to how much power does the Fed chair have, you need to understand that the nature of the institution is it's very much an institution which has certainly appointees that sit on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, but is very much a staff-driven institution. And he will not be able to get very far at that institution if he does not have the support of the people who work for him and work with him. That's true with respect to the rest of the governors on the FOMC, but it's also true with respect to the Fed writ large. And so, frankly, I am somewhat comforted by the fact that we're in a situation where we do have a set of defenses. And you have seen him just as recently as last year say that he doesn't think the Federal Reserve should be in the business of trying to be making popular decisions that go with the way of political bandwagons. And I could not agree more with him.
Before we have to go, can you quickly remind, for our viewers who may not be experts on the central bank, what happens to countries when there is politicization of their central bank?
So important to understand. Here in the United States, we tried that game in the 1970s with respect to President Nixon putting a lot of pressure on a Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. What happened was over a 2-year period, inflation soared from 3% to 13%. That's what's happened more recently in countries like Turkey and Argentina, which have experimented with putting a lot of political pressure on the Federal Reserve. And Kevin Warsh knows all of this. And my hope is that he will make decisions accordingly.
I hope so, too. Yes.